guys? It's Emery from Garrett Family Aquatics, and I'm here today to kind of do like a tell-all video on how to breed, how to keep, and how to spawn bristlenose plecos. I'm going to go over what they eat, the size and type of caves that I use to breed my plecos, and I'm going to go in depth on like kind of the tips and tricks that I've learned over however long I've been keeping my bristlenose plecos. The first thing I want to start with is the basics of setting up a habitat with the bristlenose plecos. So as you can see beside me, these are my super red bristlenose plecos. This is like just a basic tank that I think works really well for breeding purposes. So as you can see, we have the kind of like double stacked caves with slate, and then I run 2 sponge filters. I put driftwood in every single one of my breeding tanks, and then I have some dither fish. And this one I have just a random rainbow fish that randomly spawned for me in one of my tanks, and then I run some guppies. Supposedly dither fish really help make the fish feel secure, because in the wild, if there's no fish around, then there would be predators. So I think that the fish help them kind of stay out more, stay out of the caves, and kind of hang out more. And that's why I run them. I know a lot of breeders don't, but that's just my personal opinion and what I like to do. As you can see, they're out right now. They're eating. I just cleaned their tank. They're not shy at all. Bristlenose plecos are not shy. Usually they're out and they're, begging for food, and they're really cool plecos. So basically, one of the first things I want to go over is cave size and what to look for. So bristlenose plecos are cave spawning plecos. That's pretty obvious, and they like something like this. So this is a 1-inch cave that I got from plecocaves.com. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they make a good product. They're about $5 a piece, which is, you cannot make caves for $5 a piece. Even if you go and buy the terracotta and then you take it to a pottery shop and get them cooked, it's going to be more than $5. And I priced that out. So I think it's a really good deal. So basically, what you want to look for is a pinched off end cave. So one end has to be open and the back end has to be closed. It doesn't really matter how the back end is closed. It could be cone shaped, it could be pinched off like this, but it has to be closed. They will not spawn in something that's open on both sides. That's why PVC pipe doesn't work, and some other homemade things I've seen doesn't really work. I think if they were desperate, they might, but that's not going to be what they want to spawn in. So this is the first tip I'm going to suggest, is when you have younger bristlenose that are just coming of sexual maturity, you'll want to start with a 1-inch cave, and that's what this is right here. When you go to order them online, you're going to see 1-inch, 1.5-inch, and 2-inch caves. You're going to see them in all different shapes and sizes. I really don't think the shapes matter. It's more the size that matters. So when they're young, like about this size, they're about 8 months to a year old, somewhere in there. You'll want a 1-inch cave. That's what you want to start with, because they're very small. They're maybe 3-4 inches. And all of my young plecos, I have a lot of different sized caves in there. I have 1-inch, I have 1.5-inch, and I have almost 2-inch caves in there. And my bristlenose plecos have only spawned, the younger ones have only spawned in a 1-inch cave. I think that the 1.5 and 2-inch caves are too big for them to actually trap the females inside. So the next thing I want to talk about is a 1.5-inch cave. So this would be a 1.5-inch cave. It's called a 1.5-inch D-shaped cave because it's flat here on the bottom and it's rounded here. This would be for like maybe like a 1.5-year bristlenose pleco would love a 1.5, and even up until full size, they will use 1.5-inch caves. It's the same design. It's pinched off on the bottom, closed. It's a little bit deeper because once they start using this, they'll be a little bit bigger. This is a great option to have in the caves for the entire life cycle of your bristlenose plecos. So then if you're looking for something even cheaper than $5 a piece, this is what I would recommend. You can get these on Amazon. They're called self-watering plant spikes, and these do work. You can get these in different sizes. These are actually 1 7/8, so almost 2 inches. My young plecos do not seem interested in these. So these guys right here, I never really see them in the plant spikes. They're just too big for them. As you can see, like that's twice the size at least of the plecos on the opening, and these are kind of coned on the end. And these are going to be for more like your adult size, like real mature plecos are going to be using these. So my Big Daddy pleco I've had, he's probably a 1.5 years old. He does use these, but he does prefer the 1.5-inch D-shaped cave. I have gotten 1 or 2 spawns out of these, and the thing is too is like if they're desperate, they will use these. But I have noticed over observing the tanks and stuff that it's hard for them to trap the females if the cave is too big. So that's something you definitely want to keep in mind, and something that you really want to think about if you're really serious about breeding the plecos. So the next thing I want to talk about is feeding your bristlenose plecos. So this is, in my opinion, the most important thing, because if you're not feeding your bristlenose plecos and they're not eating, they're not going to be living, they're not going to be growing good, and you can really up the growing time from, say, a year until they're spawning from when they're born until I've seen them do it at 6 or 7 months, which is kind of unheard of for bristlenose plecos, and it's because of keeping them with water changes, feeding them a varied diet, and feeding them a lot of food. Like, they will eat a lot of food, and if you're feeding them the right types of food, they're not going to get bloated, and you're not going to have to worry about that at all. So the first thing I want to go over is the staple, pretty much the staple for bristlenose plecos, and that's zucchini. Every video on YouTube will basically say that you can feed them zucchini. This is a great source of food for them. It's also a great source of fiber. It's going to help their digestive tract because they have that long digestive tract. This is a great food. It's cheap. It's easy. Basically, you just cut it into slices. And what I use is I bought a bunch of forks from like the dollar store, and I put the slices on a fork and I put it in there, and they go to town on it. Otherwise, it floats if you don't sink it with something, and they're not going to get it if it's at the top of the water. So what I do is I blanch it for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, which is basically boiling it, and it makes it a little bit softer for them. But you don't have to do that. If you just want to be lazy about it, you can just cut it up, stick it on a fork, throw it in there. They will eat it, and they can survive on just this. So if you just want to be cheap about it and you don't care about them growing fast, you could just feed them zucchini and they will live a happy life. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of the same general area, but it's French style green beans with no salt added preferred. So this stuff is good. I can't say I feed this a whole lot, but I do to the baby plecos because this seems to be softer than the zucchini. Even if you boil it, they seem to be a little more fond of this. So I usually do throw some of this in there for the juvenile baby plecos, like the real small ones. The no salt added is preferred just because plecos don't do well with salt. You can get salted, but I just wouldn't put a ton in there at one time. And if you can find it, definitely get the no salt added. The next thing would be bottom wafers. So this just happens to be Extreme bottom wafers. Extreme makes really good food. I feed their pellets to my rainbow fish and a lot of my other fish, but they do make great food. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. They just make a good product. This stuff is pretty good. It will give them like a lot of the nutrients that like zucchini and whatnot won't. So if you're not into like preparing foods, which next I'm going to talk about rapashi, this would be doing this, and like zucchini or green beans would be a pretty good diet for them. That would definitely be like the easiest diet you could feed them, would be like bottom feeder wafers every once in a while, like maybe every 3rd day, and then zucchini or green beans the rest of the time. So this stuff is good, but it will cloud your water a little bit. It also does smell. It's gonna make your tank smell like fish, so take that into consideration. The next thing I want to talk about is Repashy. This is Repashy Soylent Green, which is pretty much the best one for bristlenose plecos. If I could only feed one food, it would probably be Repashy. This stuff is really good. Like, it has black soldier fly larva, pretty much every type of algae in it. I only started using this maybe like 4 months ago, and the rate at which they were growing like skyrocketed. Like, if I feed this every other day, I'm pretty much almost cutting in half the grow out time to where I can sell my plecos. So that's really, really cool. I think it's like really like one of the best diets you can feed your plecos. You do have to prepare it. It kind of prepares like Jello. What we do is we use ice cube trays, and we mix it up. Basically, if you can make ramen, you can make Repashy. You basically heat up water and you mix it in with the Repashy powder, and then we pour it into ice cube trays, and it turns into like a Jello. Basically, we keep it in the fridge you can keep it for like a week or two, and it's really good stuff. So then you just take the cubes out. That's actually what's in there right now that they're munching on, the little green cubes in there. They love this stuff. They tear it up. But what we like to do is mix the Soylent Green with something like grub pie, or I actually like Spawn and Grow better, but I don't have the container for it right now. We like to mix it half and half. That way they get like some more of the protein in the Spawn and Grow, and it really helps them grow. And then they get the Soylent Green in there to help with like their intestines, and so they're getting the fiber so it doesn't mess up their gut and make them bloated. There's also all different types. So basically, this is called Morning Wood. It's the xylophore diet. So basically it has like stinging nettle and different types of wood in it. So this would be great for like royal plecos. I have a L191 dull-eyed royal pleco, and I feed this stuff to him. He loves it. It helps him grow. And this is a really good, like, he has the driftwood too to munch on, but like this is where he's getting most of his protein and like a lot of the different woods and stuff that's in it. Great stuff. I love Repashy. And I think that if you're serious about breeding plecos, you need to invest in some Repashy. Last but not least, a friend of mine put me onto this. So this is omega-1 green nori dried seaweed. So basically what you do is you can buy these little pouches. I think the company's called 2 Little Fish or 3 Little Fish on Amazon, and you can buy a pack of these pouches. It's closed on the bottom and then closed on the sides and open on the top, and you basically just slip the sheets of the green nori in there, and you can find that on Amazon too. I wouldn't recommend buying their clips that are for it, the clip right here with the suction cups, because they're like 20 bucks a piece. I got these at my local fish store for like $3 a piece. It's called a seaweed clip. You can just clip the seaweed in the tank, but it's going to get everywhere in the tank. Like, it's going to dissolve pretty fast, and it's going to get everywhere. It's a giant mess. I would not recommend that at all. I wouldn't even, if you're not going to buy pouches, I wouldn't even recommend using it, because it's just going to be a giant mess and it's going to get everywhere. So that is basically what I feed my bristlenose plecos. And if you guys have fed something else, let me know in the comments and see how it worked for you. I have heard of people feeding like, apparently they like strawberries. I've never tried that before. I have tried pumpkin. We had a pumpkin for Halloween and we put some in there, and they did actually really like it, and they say that it's good for them. It kind of did, like, the pumpkin kind of got in the tank a little bit, so it wouldn't be something that I would do like every, it would be like if we have one, they would get it. But they also apparently like watermelon. I've never tried it before, but if you guys have fed them something that I didn't list, let me know down in the comments and maybe I'll try it. So the last thing I want to talk about, just while I kind of show you my tanks so you can get an idea of my setups and everything that I do, is just basic tank parameters and keeping your water clean. So I run my tanks at around 76 degrees. I think that that's pretty much where bristlenose plecos like it. I do colder water changes when I want them to spawn, or maybe like after a rainstorm. But I'm not talking like freezing cold. I'm talking like maybe the water is 72, 74 degrees. It's a little cooler, and I'll let the heater bring it back up. So if you haven't heard before, there is kind of a breeder's tip or trick, I guess, that when there's a storm, like a rainstorm or a snowstorm, the barometric pressure changes, and the plecos can sense that. So I have had success before. It is true, it's not a myth, that if you do a water change like during a rainstorm, or maybe even like right before or right after, and with some cooler water, that can trigger them to spawn if they haven't in a while, or the females are buried with eggs. That does work. It has worked for me before. And if you're having trouble breeding them, maybe try that. What we're looking at here is my breeding group of super red bristlenose. We actually have some babies in this hang on the box that are a couple days old. But what I wanted to go over is water quality. So this is basically how all my tanks are ran. They're 40 breeders. I have 2 sponge filters, 1 on each side. I run a heater on the back, and I do water changes once a week. I do usually about a 40% water change once a week. And that tends to keep the nitrates at 40 or below. I don't have any ammonia or nitrate, and you shouldn't in any type of cycled tank you have. And that seems to be more than enough to keep them happy, keep them spawning, keep them growing. And you just want to make sure that you have driftwood in the tank. I tend to think they like this darker stuff. I want to say it's Mopani wood or something like that. But they will rasp on it. I'm not sure if they actually eat the wood or not, but they definitely eat the microorganisms off of the wood. And then, like I was going on before, you just want to have a cave structure. You can just lay the caves on the ground, and they will use them. I just kind of like the way this looks. It's kind of like more like a high pensistrus setup, but it definitely, they like that too. So it's gonna kind of show this tank to show that this is pretty much how I run my tanks. I got the 2 sponge filters, another cave structure. These are my Snow White plecos. We have 2 spawns from them in the past month. They're looking really great. Live plants is another big one that I wanted to talk about. So we run water sprite, duckweed, frog bit. A lot of people are like, no, with duckweed, and they don't like it. It gets all over their hands and stuff. But you know what? It definitely helps reduce nitrates in the tank. So if you're like me and you really can only do 1 water change a week, because I work, it's going to keep the nitrates below 40, in my opinion, and it's definitely going to help with that. So I have Java ferns in there, water sprite. I actually have some bacopa and some rotala in here. It doesn't do too well in my breeding tanks, but I kind of put it in there when I first set it up. Got the driftwood like in all the other tanks, and the 2 sponge filters. So that's pretty much, you can see the big fat female back there. I think she's ready to go again. But you can see that that's pretty much just what you want to do. I've got a hang on the back going on the lemon bristlenose tank just to get it cycled for another tank I'm setting up. But you can tell that like every tank has driftwood, every tank has plants, every tank has caves, every tank runs off 2 sponge filters, and that's pretty much how I do it. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them if you put them in the comments. Let me know if I missed anything, or you guys have any tips and tricks for me. So until next time, see you guys later.